Brittany Scurry, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I just want to start off by saying that our conversation today is timely because, we're in the midst of a pandemic and people are unemployed, underemployed, looking for new opportunities, and it's impacting individuals, families, education system, the workplace as a whole. And so many people are out of a job. So that's why I'm thrilled for you to bring your expertise in career development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So to begin this conversation, like many other interviews, can you share with our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Brittany Scurry, and I am a student affairs professional and scholar. And so I got my master's of education in student affairs and also counseling. And so I studied what makes an optimal environment for students to learn and be holistic in that learning, incorporating their identity and their positionality. And then I also studied communication and psychology. So I really have a Socratic approach to assisting students with their learning process. And in the past, I have worked as a career advisor. Now I'm the assistant director for multicultural programs. And so now I work with assisting the campus in both celebrating and educating our entire campus population on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, but also on identity and how that affects the ways in which we learn and the ways in which we succeed. So I just am really excited about opportunities to meld those two passions of mine, career development and personal development is what I would call it. And I just really love the college age because the world is your oyster.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So speaking of melding everything together, your passions, right now in the world, there's a conversation happening around diversity, equity, and inclusion and racism. But at the same time, there's individuals, there's graduates from college, there's people in the workplace who are trying to, one, find a job, advance their job, and they're uncertain about their career opportunities. So can you share with us some career development strategies that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion for those who may be seeking employment or looking to advance their careers or just looking for options?
Absolutely. So, I think that for me, definitely during this time when people are being furloughed, people are being, fired essentially, ultimately the best career development strategy is to find a position, get into that position so that you're able to create an income. However, I think that this time is also helping or maybe motivating or pushing people who have a position to kind of reassess. We're spending all this time at home, and we really have time to look at our position and say, is this really for me? And so I would say for those folks that are kind of at a career development crossroads is to really investigate yourself. I think that every development process starts with the self. So making sure that you are authentic in your job search, knowing what you want is going to be critical in expressing who you are as an employee, who you are and where you want to go. So I would say a strategy would be to make sure that you investigate what you want and understand, we always get that question, what's your 5-year where do you plan to be in 5 years? But really, really think about that. Where do you want to be in 5 years, and how are you going to get there? Does that mean changing a position, or does that mean asking for more in your position? Getting skills, getting things that you need from the role that you're currently in. So really identify what you want to, who you want to be, and where you want to go in that position, regardless of where you are, even if you are without a job. And then apply that search, speak with a mentor or a consultant of sorts to really hone in on the search, finding new connections, and then also, going over your materials. And that's what I would say also, a strategy is building your network. So whether that be through acquiring mentors or just going to these workshops, there's tons of these Zoom workshops. If you see a person that's presenting at a workshop that, has some really cool information to share, match with them on LinkedIn, get to know them. Don't just ask right away, can you look at my resume or da, 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 but just, get to know them. And then once you do that, you'll begin to have a base that you potentially draw from. So, and then hopefully you will be getting to the interview process. And that's where I would suggest a strategy of not only allowing the company to interview you or the person to interview you, but you interviewing the company, making sure you're coming with questions. And that all ties back into knowing what you want, knowing who you are, and being authentic throughout the entire process.
Yes. So these are individual strategies. What can businesses and organizations do to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in career development?
Absolutely. So with the individual development and things that people can do, I think that companies need to be able to foster those connections in order to make it easier for the individuals to make those goals and things a reality. I think that this time, because we're having such, racial unrest and tension, we're seeing companies move as they've never moved before. They're changing things. They are, adapting policy immediately because of blowback and because they know that this is not the time to make small change or incremental change. And in fact, it never was the time to make incremental change. Companies and organizations have the ability to change policies, and that's exactly what they need to do. Whether it is creating an environment that is supportive, that relies on making sure that you have a warm and welcoming environment. So maybe doing an assessment, an anonymous assessment, creating, anti-bias, anti-racist, anti-discrimination councils so that people can report incidences and they actually come to pass and actually have a result after somebody makes a report. I think that it also means that leadership needs to educate themselves on, the experiences of their colleagues of color, of any minoritized identity, so that they can make sure that they are not asking more labor of those people of color. Oh, tell me what to do. Let's get rid of that. Instead of asking and putting more labor on the people who are already minoritized and marginalized, let's do the research ourselves. Let's find out what strategies we can do. I mean, I feel like so many people are posting, resources and skills, and something in my industry, education, it's like we tell students, hey, go find it for yourself. Google exists. We are in the age of technology. So just really educating themselves, I think, changing their policies to be more inclusive and eliminate bias and discrimination. And then also making sure that they're opening access to more people, because truly diversity is the birthplace of innovation. It only helps an organization to be diverse because you have diverse perspectives, not only diverse in culture, but diverse perspectives, diverse ideas, and that breeds innovation. So you need to make sure that your organization is an open system. That's something from my communication studies, so that new things are easily able to come into the organization, make a change, and create a new output. So that goes into where are you recruiting and how are you hiring? Are you eliminating bias in that respect? I mean, there's the age-old study of the name experiment. People put out probably, I would say, 100 resumes, and they had the exact same credentials. One name that was synonymous with a white person, and another resume that had a name that was, you know, likened to the Black community. And, you know, automatically, just by just changing the name, the white sounding name was chosen more. So how can we work to eliminate those structures within our own systems that that assist in closing our doors to our system rather than opening them? So maybe you need to do a blind resume where the names are replaced by numbers. Something to that effect. But there are several strategies out there. We just have to find them.
So, love this conversation. I could spend half a day talking about structures that put up invisible barriers to people entering the workforce. That's a half-day workshop, half-day discussion, maybe an entire day. So let's move on to I can tell that you're so passionate about what you do. You love talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then also that career path, that career development. So I'm eager to know, you know how you graduate from college and you're entering that job field and you have these expectations of how you're going to assist people. So can you share with us how your expectations versus your reality, dealing with career development, what has happened? What did you go in expecting and what has happened? What's the true story? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually interesting because now I'm thinking about the way that I got into student affairs. So I entered undergraduate with the idea that I was going to be a marriage and family counselor. And as I took different classes, I was like, oh, nope, never mind. That's not for me. So I was at a place where I was really lost. And so my first foray into student affairs was going into my career counselor's office because I needed advising. I was like, I don't know what path I want to take. And that advisor really helped me to understand who I am and you know, really helped me to figure out my path, and that student affairs was the way I wanted to go. However, that gave me the expectation that, you know, it will be as easy as meeting the right person, or as easy as the systems are going to be built and made for you to help you, you know, professionally develop. And that's not the case in reality. So once I started getting into the workforce, I realized that I had to create those myself. I had to create those mentorship connections. And I had to make sure that I was getting the skills and the I guess, education in a sense that I needed. So I was in graduate school, I was doing an assistantship as well, working in an office on the institution's campus. And, you know, they built an internship program or an assistantship program, but there was nobody that was, checking that to make sure that we got this, and this. That was our responsibility. And so that's really what my expectation reality check was, is that your career development, your professional development is truly personal development, because you have to also build within you the confidence and the drive to go after those professional goals.
What is one lesson learned through all of your experiences that you can share with us?
Let's see. I think that it, is truly the power and the benefit of mentoring. I've had several mentors in my life, and it all started with, from my family background. My mom was just really an advocate for mentors, always saying, oh, go talk to that person. And, growing up, the mother-daughter relationship, I'm like, oh my gosh, can you stop, But as I grew older, I realized that, mentors have truly saved me from different situations, allowed me to advocate for myself in a positive way. And it's not even about, what can I get from them? But it's just purely having relationships with people who have done something that you're looking to do. You're going to get wisdom by virtue of just knowing them. And so that's one thing that I would say. Mentors and mentoring relationships are powerful, but you don't want to go into them as if you're just scavenging for wisdom. Just go into it as if it's a relationship, and the growing will happen.
About mentors, did you always actively seek mentors, or were they just casually, informally just blossom? Or, if someone's thinking, how can I find a mentor? Could a mentor just be right underneath their nose and they not even realize it?
Yes, I think that that's true. Like, a lot of people say that they've never had a mentor, but maybe they have one, but they don't call it that formally. And so I think that that's taking the stigma out of mentor. Like, if you have to call it something else, do whatever you have to do, because it's not this daunting, ominous situation where somebody's watching over you. It's just another person, in your life, a part of your network that's helping you, that's just has a little bit more information than you do at that time. And I've often heard from my mentors that in some ways they grow from knowing me as well. Like, it's not a one-way situation where you're only getting things and you're not giving things. But for me, the mentors that I have called mentors have mostly been ones that I sought after, or have been recommendations, or friends of the family. And so in the ways that they were friends of the family, they were, it was more, of an organic relationship. And then I also had a supervisor who became a mentor just by virtue of knowing them. And that's another thing. Your supervisor is not going to always be your mentor. And so don't expect that. But that happened to be a time where they were. So that was nice.
Do you have any real stories that you like to share? We love to get to know. We learn through sharing stories. So do you have a story you can share with us?
Oh yeah. I have two interview stories that really show the juxtaposition of knowing what you want and and how that can affect your search, and then also not knowing essentially what you want. So there was one institution that I interviewed for, and this was my first interview post grad school, and I was just excited. Well, it was my first on-campus interview. So in the higher ed or student affairs field, you do a phone interview, a Skype interview, and then an on-campus interview, which can almost be a day long. And so this interview, I went around and felt like I had handled the questions very well. And then we got towards the end, and there was a boardroom of people, probably about 25 people. And each one of them asked me a question. And I was astonished. And it really took me off guard. I feel like that is a sentiment to, what are our practices telling our future employees? And I think that told me that this was not the place for me. I thought it was going to be a fun, small institution that has tight, close-knit relationships, but the processes of the interview did not communicate that. And so thankfully I knew what I wanted in that I did not want that. But I was sweating because I thought that I really wanted it. But looking back in hindsight, I knew that would have not been the place for me. And luckily they were already looking at an internal hire. So I was pretty much there for technicality. That's what it felt like. But yeah. But then there was another institution where I went on an interview, and this was actually an enjoyable interview. It sounds like an oxymoron. Is that the right word? Yeah. But it was great because they communicated what their environment was like in the interview. So instead of doing a day of talking to different people all over campus, having these long, arduous interview questions, we did what we would be doing in the role. So this was a interview for a position of an advisor. And so we did a mock advising session. And in this role, I wasn't going to have to present a lot, but they still wanted to know how I would present to an audience. So instead of doing a long, hour-long presentation, I did a 5-minute presentation. So they were able to see, and the topic was just do a 5-minute presentation on anything you want to talk about. And so that also let me know that they want to know about me as a person, not just as an employee. And they want to know how I will do in this job, by the mock interview thing. And so like most interviews, I am, like, even if I felt like I did well, I am, like, oh, this was so exhausting. But after that interview, I was energized. I was like, this is amazing. And so I think that those really are cool stories to show you kind of the juxtaposition of that and knowing what you want.
I love the compare and contrast of two interviews, and it's fascinating to explore. Let's wrap up here, just because of our climate that we're in. Do you have any advice that you want to share for those seeking to develop their career paths, particularly those historically marginalized groups, LGBT, Black, women? Any advice on their career paths?
Absolutely. So as I would share with anyone, I think that you have to be authentic and be true to yourself, because ultimately that is who's going to show up every day, is your authentic self, even if it's later on. I think also it's important to know who you're getting in business with. So I think that the Human Rights Campaign has an index, especially for LGBTQ people that are part of the LGBTQ community. You can look at companies that have a score on whether or not they are, you know, affirming or not affirming to the community. And then, you know, for those of, you know, minoritized racial identities, that's where joining organizations, joining Facebook groups, Twitter, you know, for the younger generation or the older generation, joining groups that have a focus in your industry are going to be key. People are going to be posting. You can say, hey, have you ever worked here? I'd love to pick your brain. And then you can get the kind of the real information, as we say in my generation, the real tea of the situation. I would also advise you, when you get into that position, anything that is free, get it. Any certificate, any workshop, if you can allow it in your schedule, get it, because you are preparing yourself for that 5-year down the road. So whatever skill you can get today, oh my goodness, I'll tell you, like, I have gotten so many certificates, and it's not a matter of if you'll use it in your role today, but will you use it at any point in your life? There's sometimes I don't even know if I will use it in my field, but maybe I'll use it in my personal life. Whatever it is, get the certifications, get the knowledge, be a continual learner. Because oftentimes, unfortunately, folks from minoritized identities have to work almost twice as hard to get half as far. And having all those certificates will help you to be able to use the language to get you to the next step. And then I would also say that, man, I had something on my brain. Oh, always negotiate. Always negotiate. Do not leave money on the table. Negotiating is key. If you need help doing that, you can reach out to me, but I think you should never not negotiate. That's a double negative, but there's certain times and places for negotiation and amounts for negotiation, but you should never leave money on the table, and that's what you're doing when you don't negotiate. And then in that same key, get in the business of discussing your salary with your coworkers. The whole women's equal pay movement came out of that. Positions will tell you not to do that. Society will tell you not to do that because it's rude. In my experience, it's never been rude as long as you're kind and, you know, casual with it, because that's how you can negotiate something more. And then I will just end with, in this time of unrest and just people are realizing things and relying on you for, I guess, an education in certain things, mindfulness is key. So I told you I come from a psychology background, and mindfulness meditation, just practicing mindfulness in your daily life will help you to ground yourself in the now. And actually, speaking of that, I have a quote from today that, like, really, because I do this Calm app where you do like a morning meditation, and then they give you this little quote, and I just really want to share that because I feel like it's so pertinent. Let me see if I can find it. So when we're growing up, there are all sorts of people telling us what to do, when really what we need is a space to work out who to be. And mindfulness helps you to understand and ground yourself in who you want to be. And I think that that's really important. So.
Oh, I love it. Isn't it funny how things work out that way? You received that quote today, and we're talking about this today. So if someone wants to reach out to you to learn how to negotiate or just for your help in their career development, where can we find you? How can we contact you?
Absolutely. So I just got back on Twitter per a mentor's recommendation. She was like, you have to be on Twitter to be in the conversation. And so I just restarted my Twitter, and I will be posting things on personal and professional development. And I just want to make sure I get it right because, like I said, it is new, but it's at symbol A_BITOFBRITT. So a bit of Brit. And also you can email me at my email address, which is BRITTNEYSCURRY@gmail.com, which is just my first and last name at gmail.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I'll be sure to include all your contact information in the COM app and the index, everything mentioned in today's conversation with this recording. And I just want to thank you for your candor today and taking time out to speak to our audience. And you're welcome anytime back. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I think that this is a testament because Tamisha and I met because of LinkedIn mentoring. So that's another link that you can go to or through your profile, because you know, I would not have had this opportunity to share this if not reaching out through that platform. So
wonderful. Well, thank you, Brittany, and I'll talk to you soon.